So composition doesn't just end in the field. A lot of what you can do in composition can be done in post-processing and editing. And in this video, what I want to do is show you exactly how you can do that and how that can massively improve your photos. Fantastic to see you all again. Before we get to me talking about editing Enchanted Oaks, I wanted to say I finally got my own pictures framed. I am this cobbler's shoes. I'm the worst person at actually framing my own photos. And I can't believe I didn't do it earlier actually, because they look really good. The reason I got this framed is because I was actually getting a present from my mum and dad. It's the 60th wedding anniversary tomorrow, actually today when you're watching this. So I'm going to be up there giving them their 60th wedding anniversary present, which is a really big picture of mine that they really like. And I thought I might as well get some others framed at the same time. So I got this one and another one in my studio as well. So I thought I'd show you. Okay. Back to the video. First, I just want to say a massive thanks to everybody who watched and commented on my video last Sunday. I was blown away by the feedback I got. Obviously one of my most popular videos. Everyone seemed to love me in the woodland. It was such a beautiful, beautiful couple of mornings, and it was so fantastic to be able to share that with everybody. And also my photo, Enchanted Oaks, got, I think, the most likes on Instagram ever, the most retweets ever. I think it was seen by 155,000 people on Twitter, which is way and above more than any other photo that I've posted on Twitter. So I'm really pleased because it is literally my favourite image that I've taken this year, and something that I've been trying to take for so long, for so many years. As you can see by these images, I've had lots of failed attempts at it, mainly because I didn't just have the conditions I wanted, the fog I needed, because whenever I went there, the fog hadn't dropped down. But I finally got the shot, and luckily I had 2 mornings to be able to get the right composition. So I'm going to dive straight into Lightroom, and just going back to the first morning, if we go back to this image here, this is the edited image of that first morning, and it's a great photo. I really, really like it. But when I got back, what I was able to do was look at some of the mistakes that I made. I think one of the big mistakes was to do with this tree here. And I feel that this tree just crosses over too many branches and too many trees. And this branch just doesn't look great. And then I also had this sort of tree in the background here, which I felt like was a man with a stick sort of running towards these other trees here, which I really liked, and I felt that in this image it probably got lost a little bit. Well, not lost is probably not the right thing, but just wasn't in the right place. And then the other thing is, even though it was quite foggy, I just don't feel like I've captured that enough. I think I probably took this just a little bit too late, and I lost a little bit of that blue hour colour as well. I did try and crop it and then tweak it, but it just felt over processed. So then eventually went back and took this shot. So this was two mornings later, and so this was shot at just a default white balance on my camera, which was set at 6,000. I think the actual colour of it was probably more around about 4,000 or 5,000, like that. Now the thing is with this shot is I underexposed it, and I actually made a bit of a mistake, if I'm honest, because I was so overexcited. I didn't want the exposure to go longer than around about 9 or 10 seconds, because there was no wind, but there was enough that I did notice for longer exposures it started to make an issue with some of these leaves up here. But then I also didn't think about the ISO, so I just got carried away basically. I had it on manual and I didn't increase the ISO, and what I should have done is shot it at probably a slightly higher ISO and then moved the histogram a little bit to the right hand side. Luckily, if I just look at this, we can look at the exposure and we can see if I just really brighten it up, there is not, even in the shadows here, there's no noise to speak of. So I got away with it, but it was slightly underexposed, I'd say. But there's a few things, 3 things that I can show on this image that massively changes the composition when I edit it. So the first of those is colour. And I'm going to show you the finished image, and I'm going to show you the things that I did to the finished image rather than just do all those things individually to this image. So I think that's probably the better way of doing it. So I'll just go into this image here, which is the finished image, and you can see that it's slightly bluer. And I achieve that in two ways. And I think colour is really important for composition and how you portray mood in a shot. So in this particular image here, I wanted it to look very blue. I wanted it to have that sort of fantasy feeling to it. And I felt colour would really help me out here. But I didn't want to lose some of those greens on the lichen and on the leaves. So it was a careful balance between getting the temperature right and toning it correctly as well. So I reduced the white balance. You see, it was, when I took it, it was about this, and that had most of the impact really. And I reduced it down to around about 4,788. And then the other thing that I did is I'd increase the contrast, which added some saturation into the image. So I went from a contrast of 0 to a contrast of around about 39, I think it was. And you can see that that's added some more saturation as well as contrast into the image. And then the other thing that I did for the colour, the two other things I did, were I slightly tweaked the saturation hue, but not a lot, and not as much as I usually would do in this particular image, because I didn't feel that that was working quite right. I slightly increased the saturation of the greens, and I slightly changed the saturation of the greens and the aquas in this. Now I could have gone to town with these aquas because this was the colour that was making the biggest difference, but I just couldn't quite get it right. What I found made the biggest difference was split toning it. So I just toned the highlights and the shadows blue. And again, that's something that I don't often do. So I almost toned the whole image really. And you can see it's subtle, but if I switch this off and then back on, you can see that I've slightly toned it a little bit of a blue colour. Now there was lots of other things I did to edit it, but from a colour perspective, that was really important because it created this mood in the image, and that mood was something that I really wanted to portray in this Enchanted Oaks image, that sort of Lord of the Rings feeling. In fact, some people have even said it looks like it's underwater, and that's good because it's... My friend Mark Littlejohn often says reality is overrated, and this is a good point of it really. The reality is still pretty good, but just by adding a little bit of colour to it, I've just created something that's a little bit more dramatic, and I really like that. Okay, on to the next thing, which was the crop. So if we just look at the crop, you can see that I've cropped off a little bit of the bottom and a little bit of the top. Now, I always knew when I took this image that I was going to crop a little bit the bottom off of the image because it just wasn't very balanced. But I didn't want to do that in camera because I would have cropped too much of the sides as well. So what it was like was this, and if I just crop it back to there, you can see that that's just slightly unbalanced because there's too much foreground. It's quite nice foreground, but there's just too much. So I basically just cropped it and taken off some of that foreground. I played around with this for so long. I kept leaving my computer, coming back to it, tweaking it. But I eventually came to this because I felt there was a really nice set of three rocks here, this one, and this one. I thought there was a nice line that came diagonally up through the image and then through into the image here. And as you'll see when I talk about dodging and burning, I managed to just get this right and this level of foreground right by dodging in and burning in the bottom sides part of the image. And if you look at the before and after of that crop, you can see that I've brightened it up quite a lot. So which takes me on to the dodging and burning part of it, which is probably the thing that I've done most on this image. And because I knew it was going to be printed, in my head, I had that printed image. And actually the image that I shared online, as usual with all my images, was slightly different to the printed image that I'm going to show you here. The one online I edited with Snapseed after I edited it in here, and I toned down some areas, toned up other areas, and just tweaked it a little bit. And I've done a video on editing for Instagram here, so you can go and take a look at that. But when I got onto this part, what I wanted to do was emphasize the fog and the depth in the image and this brightness coming through the cover of the trees in the distance. So I did a few things to dodge and burn, and they're all a little bit different, so I'm going to go through all the things that I did. So if I just show you the finished version, the first thing I did is I used quite a few different radial masks, well, 2 different radial masks. So the first one was this one, which had the biggest impact. So if I just delete that, well, if I just delete that radial mask here, you'll see that that brightened up this area quite a bit. So I'm just going to undo that again. So this radial mask, you can see, is just applying to the lighter areas of the image. And the way I did that is I used a luminance mask on it. And I just said, I don't want this luminance mask just to apply to the brighter tones in this image. And then all I've done with this is I've slightly changed the temperature and the tint, just very slightly, but I've just brightened it up by 3/4 of a stop. And that, as you can see if I do this, it just brings out these light areas in the image, and I felt that that worked really well, but I haven't changed any of the shadow detail in the image. So that worked well. And this one here was just to change the shadow detail. So if I just hover over this, you can see this tree here was just slightly too dark because it's closer to the image, so it's not affected by the fog as much. So I wanted to sort of just subdue this a little bit. So what I did was I did exactly the same, a radial filter, but I did the opposite. I just applied it to the shadows, and then you can see I increased the shadows, I increased the contrast, and that had the impact. And if I just delete that, you can see it's a little bit darker. When I put it back, it goes a little bit lighter. Subtle, but it does make a difference, especially when I'm printing it, because I don't want it to be too black. I want to be able to see some detail in that tree. So they were 2 radial masks. I did quite a lot of graduated masks as well. I'm not going to go into all of them. I darkened this corner here just a tiny bit. I darkened down the bottom of the image here a tiny bit because I wanted to draw my eye into the main part of the image, which was through into here where this guy, this tree, but I call him a guy with a stick, is because that's what I feel that ultimately hopefully your eye goes to. And then I did some contrast changes. I tend to add multiple graduated filters and do different things on each filter. So on this one I did contrast changes, on this one I did brightness, and then if I want to I can go and alter them individually, or I could delete one of them and just delete those changes if I wanted. And then these 2 were for the top of the image. I think one of them again was applying just to the highlights, but I wanted it to go all the way to the top, not just the middle part. And that was just reducing the highlights and increasing the exposure, just to change some local contrast between those. So all those things added up to quite a lot of changes. The final thing I wanted to say on dodging and burning, I just added a few filters here. This just little bit of the tree was just a bit dark, so I just dodged it. And when I did that, I did auto masking, so it would auto mask just to the dark areas. And then this one here is just to just add a little bit of brightness to part of the tree to give it more of a 3D look. So it's really subtle, but it makes a difference. And that tree and all those edits that I added onto that tree make it what it is. And that was it. I didn't remove any parts of it. I did think about removing individual twigs here and there, but I felt that the complexity, the messiness of it actually added to the image. And yeah, I'm just so over the moon with this. I really like it. And there isn't a lot I look at now with this image where I think I could have done something better. I really, really like it. So yeah, I hope that's helped. I hope everyone has got something out of that and can see the things that I've done. It was an iterative process. It took me about a week to edit it, looking at it probably every day over that week and just keep making changes. You know, I did do lots of different edits of it and lots of different color changes, but I feel like this is the one that works best. Okay, the other thing that I want to speak about is hash 2020ND and go through some of your images. I'm going to do that in a second. Before I do it, just tell you about Sunday's video. So Sunday's video, I'm going to talk about my book a little bit more, which has sold out now. So I probably should have done this earlier, but anyway, I thought it'd be interesting just to talk about it and how I produced it. But also I'm going to talk about photo books in general. So I've had some other photo books made. So one here, a really small one of the Faroe Islands, one here of my time in San Francisco, and I've had this really huge one made as well. I won't tell you what's in this one, but it's really cool. I've made them through 3 different companies that anybody can go and use. And I thought I'd talk you through my process of making these books. We can have a look at them, see what the quality is like, see how that compares to making a professional book like the one that I made, Vistas, what the pros and cons of doing it. Well, you can't do it that way unless you're printing 1,000, but I just want to show you the quality difference, which isn't huge, but there is a little bit of a difference. And I thought that might be interesting. So it's all about books on Sunday, and also my calendar will go on sale for pre-orders on Sunday. I have it here. So here's a little sneak preview of it. This is my 2021 calendar, probably my best set of images ever in my calendar. I think the last 12 months has been really kind to me. So that'll go on sale on Sunday, so make sure you tune in for that. Okay, finally, let's have a look at your photos from #2020ND. I'm really sorry for how long it's taken me to get to these. It's been such a hectic month for me. But I've gone all the way back to the beginning of June and looked and chosen what I think are some of the really exceptional photos here. But what was interesting was that there was a lot of macro photos as well as woodland photos. I presume that's maybe because people are going closer to home and exploring their local woods and whatever. So there was lots of macro photos like this one here from Marco. I felt the detail in this was just so interesting. I love it when there's just a drop of water. And the composition of this closer up one I felt was really strong as well. So I like that. I like this shot here of the Golden Gate Bridge. It wasn't just the Golden Gate Bridge through the mist, but it had these 2 birds in it, which I felt added something to the composition. Again, a super simple shot, which often works really well. I was really taken by this one. It's not a landscape shot, I know, but John's done a fantastic job of framing this really nicely. Got some fantastic angles, diagonals in it. Yeah, it's a strong black and white of the buildings, and black and white often works so well. There were some good shots of the similar woods that I was shooting. This is from Alex. I think there's a few by Alex actually. I really liked this and the framing of it, of these 3 older silver birches and the newer silver birches in the background, and this rhododendron bush looked really nice. Super simple framing. Quite difficult to take a shot like that and make it look good. So Alex has done a great job there. I'll come down to some of them again in a minute, but there was lots of woodland ones like this. This one, super simple, but I think it just tells a bit of a story, that as well. Makes you want to be out wandering in the woodlands, doesn't it? Another silver birch by Alex here, fantastic shot. Another one here. This silver birch is actually really close to where I live. I think I know the path it's on actually, but yeah, it's just really nice shot. I really was taken by this shot here. So this was a shot in the Peak District by, I don't know who this is, Starkey, probably not his first name. But what I really liked about this was just the sort of subtleness of the editing, but how it's rained and the sunlight has just picked up the reflection on the rainy road surface here, which I felt looked really good. This was a fantastic shot. Again, I don't think that somebody's left their name here. Photo Edge 67. I think this was just really different actually. I really like the fact that he used depth of field, or she or he had used depth of field. It tells a story where these flowers are growing into the seat. Maybe somebody hasn't sat on it. Yeah, I really like this. I felt this was a really interesting shot. There's a few winter shots which I thought were quite good. Some other close-ups like this one and this one here from Lee I thought were really nice. Right, I've got to choose one. Got to choose a winner. I'm going to go back to this one. This one for me is just something just a little bit different about it. I really like the road down here, and I like the fact that you've got it in just some different conditions where it's obviously rained, you've got this really beautiful light reflecting off the road, and you also not over processed it. So I really like that. I think it's Chris looking at the comments, so well done Chris. This is my #2020ND photo of the week or the month really, because I haven't done it for a few weeks. Thanks everyone for sending in the #2020ND photos. Keep doing it. I will keep doing it. I'll do it much more often now in these midweek videos. And yeah, I think they're great to see, and obviously everyone can go and have a look at them just by searching #2020ND in Instagram. That's it. Thanks ever so much. See you on Sunday. Bye.